Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. episode 18, Providence. And this episode continues right from last week's episode, and it still sort of ties into some of the things in Captain America. So I won't spoil anything from that. I already did that in the last review that I did, which was super long, so you can check that out if you just recently saw Captain America or something. You can go check out that one, and I do a review on that episode as well as the movie and how the episode and the movie really tie in well together. And this one does tie in pretty well too, and it gives us some things, some really important information actually. It's also interesting, of course, but it's very important information. One of the big things we find out in this episode is that Fury isn't actually dead, and even though he's not dead, no one really does know where he is, and there are only a few people that actually know that he's even alive. So it's really interesting to get that information because last week everyone thought Fury's dead. The only person that knows on the team now that Fury is alive is, of course, Coulson, because Fury gave orders to this character who is played by Patton Oswalt, so I don't remember what name they actually gave the character, but he tells Coulson Fury's alive, but, excuse me, I couldn't tell your team because they aren't vetted. I don't know them. They are new to me. They're new people. I have no information on them. Fury said, tell you, that's all there is to it. And even in the very beginning when they all got in, he was talking about lanyards and stuff. And I love that scene where he says, you'll get your very own lanyard pretty soon. But lanyards for everyone else will be on a person-to-person basis, which I thought was pretty funny. And it was just really interesting to see this episode where everything is destroyed now. S.H.I.E.L.D. is not an agency. They're, as Sky put it, they'll be agents of nothing. But as Coulson put it, they aren't agents of nothing. They're still agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. They just have to find a way to be that without letting everybody know. They can't exactly go around saying, we're from S.H.I.E.L.D., here's my badge and stuff, because every agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. now is wanted by the government. So it's a really interesting episode. It's the very beginning of this sort of new arc to the story and the Marvel world in general, really, because since Captain America, the next movie that we're really gonna get, where it focuses on the characters that are actually gonna be on Earth, isn't until next year, which is gonna be the Avengers 2. So even with Guardians of the Galaxy coming out this year, it won't focus anything on Earth and S.H.I.E.L.D. and all of the HYDRA stuff happening on Earth because they'll be out in space. It's way out there with very minimal tie-ins to everything else in the Marvel Universe. But with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., we'll get a weekly dose of these characters dealing with what's going on with S.H.I.E.L.D. in the Marvel Universe, and with this being the big thing that Hydra has taken over S.H.I.E.L.D. or infiltrated S.H.I.E.L.D. for so long, and that S.H.I.E.L.D. has destroyed itself, it's going to change the Marvel Universe, and that's why the show is really picking up right now. I always enjoyed the show from the very beginning. I thought this is a pretty good show, but it always got sort of medium reviews. It was fairly okay. No one thought it was like the most amazing thing ever. It had its episodes here and there that were really great, but for the most part, everyone just thought, yeah, it's okay. It's not horrible, but it's not like watching a shorter version of one of the films. It's nothing like that. It's just a TV show within the Marvel Universe, and that's it. But now that things have changed for the characters and that it's changed so much for the Marvel Universe, they're gonna be picking the show up, and it's gonna be carrying on a lot differently than it has been since the very beginning. I don't know how many episodes we have left, but in season 2, I can't wait to see how interesting things get and how different the show's gonna be, because they're no longer S.H.I.E.L.D. It's just we're agents. We have to find a way to survive and be covert operatives that used to be a part of S.H.I.E.L.D., but now we're just out here in the world, and we still have to help it because that's who we are. That's what we do. But we can't help it as S.H.I.E.L.D. We have to help it as something else. And I don't know if in the Marvel comics there's like a new form of S.H.I.E.L.D. or anything like that. I'm sure there is at some point. I know things just happen. S.H.I.E.L.D. gets destroyed. It'll probably rebuild itself over time, and it'll take a long time for that. They might have to, convince the government, hey, we're S.H.I.E.L.D. We weren't infiltrated by HYDRA, of course, but we at least have these couple of people, as they talked about in this episode. They have a few bases that have been vetted as free of HYDRA, and it's really only 3 out of all the random bases they have, but they're getting more and more over time, and they might have to convince the government to let them back in a sense, and let them know we are the good guys still, and we have looked into the details, and none of these people are Hydra, none of these people are trying to take over the government or sell you lies or manipulate you so that we can get what we want. But it'd be interesting to see the day-to-day operations and just how they survive. And we also get in this episode more stuff from the clairvoyant, so to speak. And we also get the woman, Raina, I believe her name is, the woman in the flower dress. And she was supposed to be dead, if I remember right. I could have forgotten that, but I could have sworn she died when she got shot in the stomach. But maybe I just missed it in that episode. But I was glad to see her back. I do like her character, even though she doesn't really say much. She's an interesting character because she believed that the clairvoyant was clairvoyant, and she finds it in this episode that he was just an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. who was lying to everybody and tricking them. So she was really disappointed in that fact, but she is still working with him. And in the end of this episode, she brings in the guy who's been in quite a few episodes, and even he was upset that he was tricked by the clairvoyant because he thought it was someone who actually had powers too. But in the end of this episode, they do something that's really, really important, I think, for the rest of this season and this series as a whole, and that is he gets, in his first episode, he had this material, gravitronium, I believe it was called, and he gets that back. Ward finds it after Coulson told him, at some random point, he told him that the gravitonium was kept in the fridge. And we also find out that pretty much every weapon ever is actually kept and nothing is sent off into space. So they have all these weapons, but I think the gravitonium is going to be the most important thing because in that episode where the one character was first introduced, I can't think of his name right now, but he's always in a suit every time they show him. When he was first introduced in that episode, the man he held captive, I believe he held the man captive who was working for him, that man jumped into the gravitronium, and in the end of that episode, they had it where it was floating in this little box, and the hand sort of came out. And as soon as they showed that, I knew this character would eventually form, and he would be Gravitron, who is able to basically control gravity and manipulate anything, almost like telekinesis, but a little bit stronger than that, I guess, because he could basically inflict a sort of sense of gravity or no gravity on any object that he wants. He can make you as light as air and you just fly up, or reverse gravity and you get shot into space or something crazy like that. But they've reintroduced that, and that gravitronium is free, and we'll have to wait and see exactly what happens. It'll probably be used in a weird way first, and then that'll result in the character basically reawakening within the gravitronium and controlling it himself and forming his body again. But I do believe they're going to bring that character in. It might not even be this season, it might be next season. But if they do, that character will be a really big part of the series, and he might not even be in one episode. He could be the main villain over the entire season, where they have to get help because, of course, the agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. are all human, and this guy's controlling gravity and stuff. They might have to bring in superheroes from the movies, or maybe bring in some heroes that we haven't seen yet in the films to take this guy down. And I'd love to see that, where they have to actually take on a supervillain, because they really only had that once, and it was, I believe, when the guy was tricked into working for Centipede, and they enhanced his fire powers. He was the first actual supervillain that they took on. And I'd love to see them go against that again, where they take on a character that actually is known in the Marvel Universe. And that other character who had the fire powers probably was known in the comics, but I didn't know him, but I do know Gravitron, so it would be cool to see someone that I actually recognize. But they have all of these weapons now, HYDRA does, and it'll be really crazy to see what their plan is next. I mean, they took out the fridge, they stole all the weapons, they did a little reference to one of the older episodes where Ward's holding on to the staff that makes you go crazy with rage. I thought that was a nice little nod to a previous episode. But he has that. They have all the other crazy weapons. They have this weird particle cannon that can just blast giant holes in walls. And also he releases a bunch of criminals when he uses that weapon. Not Ward, but the clairvoyant. And he talks to one guy who looks right at him, and they hold the camera on this guy for maybe 5 seconds. And whenever they do that, you know someone's important. I thought he's gonna come back and he's gonna have superpowers. At least I assumed he would, but he does because in the preview he is one of the villains in the episode, and I thought it just makes perfect sense. You don't show a character stop and look at one of your important people for no apparent reason. You don't showcase a character if you're not going to bring them back at some point in the series, and he's going to be in the very next episode. And from what I saw in the preview, he does actually have telekinesis. At least he was able to push people away, so I would assume it's telekinesis where you can push and pull objects. But excited to see them take on a second supervillain, so they will be doing that next week. And also it revolves a lot around Coulson and someone he was in love with, so that'll be interesting to see as well. But a great episode, and it ended very well with Ward actually going back to the team, and they still don't know that he's obviously working for Hydra, so very excited to see how things play out. Really curious to see if we end up losing a character. I highly doubt we will because I don't think they'll actually kill off any of the main people. But it'll be interesting to see exactly how he goes through his plan and gets Sky to basically release all the information that she has. And we'll have to see what the clairvoyant still has in store because so far he's just getting weapons and it seems like he's just trying to build up his army and just kill a bunch of people, which doesn't seem like too devious of a plan. It's devious, of course, but it's really simplistic and obvious for a supervillain to do. But with all these weapons, I feel like there has to be some much grander story than he's just getting weapons to kill a bunch of people. So I'm curious to see exactly what his plan is and what he hopes to accomplish outside of destroying certain people here and there. Of course, they still believe Fury's out of the questions or out of the picture, so they don't have any question as to whether or not he's going to be a threat, which of course he will be, but he's dark. He's gone dark, so we'll have to wait and see if he comes back in this series, which I do believe they already announced that he'll be in the season finale, but who knows how much of the season finale he'll be in. He might show up at the last second, and then it's like, wait for season 2 to come out or something. Who knows? But great episode. Can't wait to see the rest of this season because we're getting towards the end, and I'm just curious how they plan on advancing the entire Marvel Universe because the big thing about this show is it ties into the movies. So they have a lot of time before Avengers 2 comes out, and everything they do in this show is going to have an impact on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or on the Avengers 2. So we'll have to wait and see, but I'm really excited for the rest of this season and definitely the future of this series if it does get renewed, which I do believe it will be because it's a Marvel show. Fanboys and fangirls alike are just going to flood the show, especially now that it actually has something incredibly unique about it, which is Hydra has destroyed S.H.I.E.L.D. So we'll have to wait and see, but comment below, let me know what you guys thought of this episode, favorite parts, least favorite parts, and how do you guys think the rest of the season's going to play out now that the clairvoyant and his team, being Hydra, have all of these weapons at their disposal. Where do you guys think it's going to go? Comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.